It is true. The United States is making huge changes when it comes to how we are approaching the war in Ukraine. President Trump has ordered a pause on intelligence sharing with Ukraine altogether. This comes, of course, after the administration halted the shipment of weapons. In his speech last night, the president defended his approach to the war, saying you got to talk to both sides to end a war. Meanwhile, Zelensky says he does see forward momentum in cooperation with the U.S. Yesterday, he posted on X that he was ready to sign the White House's minerals deal anytime. Our nightcap is still here. David, Michael McFaul, former ambassador to Russia, said every single thing that Donald Trump is doing right now is exactly what Putin wants. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think if you were trying to destroy the country from within, you would do everything Donald Trump's done in his first 50 days. You would wreck the economy, you would suspend the services from the federal government, and you would demolish our security alliances with the West. I found what happened in the White House last week maybe the most unsettling thing of all the years of Trump's presidency. Greater than Helsinki, maybe greater than January 6th for this reason. If you play out the sequence of this on a chessboard, what Donald Trump may knowingly have done, which is exactly what Putin would have wanted, is when you abandon Ukraine, Europe now has to rush to Ukraine. Europe doesn't have a choice, and they have to strengthen their bond with Ukraine. And if Donald Trump decides out of his own vanities, wait a minute, Europe, you're not following my direction, you could fast forward a couple years. The United States is in a power axis, an alliance with Russia and China against the interest of Europe. And Europe sees the U.S., Russia, and China as an adversarial alliance against their interests. It is the complete undoing of NATO, but it is a repositioning of the U.S. position in the world. That is realistic. This is more than just the United States and Donald Trump abandoning the defense of Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. This is pushing Europe into a stronger role that Donald Trump has told them he doesn't want them to be in. He doesn't want a stronger NATO. And now Europe's going to say, we are going to strengthen NATO. Macron actually addressed the French people just in the last 24 hours, essentially alluding to this. If Donald Trump says, screw you, Europe, I'm getting greater reception and sympathies from Russia and Putin, we could end this Trump administration with a new axis, a new alliance of Russia, China, and the United States.
Jessica, did you ever think that we would see this in our lifetime?
I did not have this on my bingo card. You know, last week I was asked by someone if Russia attacked Europe, whose side would the U.S. be on? And I said, well, of course, we'd end up on Europe's side.
Did you? Was that question asked before or after Friday, the meeting?
Before Friday. And then today, I think Macron essentially answered that Europe is quite concerned that if Russia were to attack, and I mean beyond Ukraine, that we would either remain neutral or, I have a hard time even saying it, not remain neutral and taking sides with Russia. He didn't say it, but that was the clear implication when he was telling his people why we need to spend money on arming ourselves, protecting our own defense. They don't even think they can count on the U.S. not taking sides with our avowed adversary.
Could this be the issue where the business community does break with Trump? Right. On Friday, we saw investors say, I remember interviewing Steve Schwartzman from Blackstone, a very close ally of Donald Trump years ago, said Blackstone doesn't even do any business in Russia or with Russian companies because they cannot trust their rule of law. Are they all going to sit idly by while Donald Trump is aligning himself with Russia?
I don't know that a foreign policy issue is going to be the issue that causes the U.S. business community to abandon Donald Trump. I think
that's more than foreign policy. That's world order.
But I think a failing U.S. economy and a stumbling U.S. economy and a cratering stock market and inflation and escalating interest rates are going to alienate the business community from Donald Trump. But by the time they take action on being alienated, it's going to be too late. Everything that Donald Trump is doing right now, he telegraphed during the campaign. And I think people who supported him, whether they were in the business community or the foreign policy community or the political community, comforted themselves with this idea that he wouldn't go there.
Oh, he's gone there.
And he's going there. And what's really obscene about what's happening in Europe now, and it's mirrored by what he's doing with tariffs, is he takes a step forward and then backs off a little bit, and then he takes another step forward. Even if he doesn't complete that journey down a complete abandonment of NATO or a full imposition of tariffs, the communities that he's scaring and the communities that he's keeping off balance have to plan and take action already as if you will, because the issues are so existential. So Germany now is completely reordering its own fiscal guidelines so it can spend more on defense. And so it can ramp up defense spending. Europe is rearming now in anticipation that they will have to go it alone, regardless of what the U.S. does towards NATO. So he's creating these tinderboxes around national security, around the economy, and around people who should be our allies because they don't trust us anymore. So there's reputational damage, there's diplomatic damage, and there's economic damage. And any one of those things could alienate the business community. But by the time they're ready to stand up for values that go beyond simply supporting Donald Trump, it could be too late.
Jessica, how significant are these pauses in intelligence and weapons, right? Ukraine is in the middle of a war. This isn't like saying we're going to pause on tariffs, so it might take a little while to get that Dodge Ram. This is intelligence in a wartime. We've
gone AWOL on them. We have abandoned them on the battlefield, and people will die because of this. They'll pivot to get intel from Europe, and there will be backstops. But it's almost unthinkable. Except Donald Trump clearly has it's not just sort of random whim decision making here. This is clearly an effort to reorder our relationships around the world, and we have to ask why. Who does this serve? What's the longer term goal? Is there a mission here to truly destabilize democracies? Do they have an interest in shifting how we function as a government here? And does this ultimately serve some of the people around him?
Where is Marco Rubio? Where is Lindsey Graham? How did this happen?
Cowardice is a word that I think is appropriate, because we know where their convictions were, and they haven't explained.
But you know these people.
And I will never understand why they chose to follow and not lead in this moment. You can chalk it up to being their political interests and their quest for power. That might explain Lindsey Graham. Marco is somebody that I suppose you can assign that to as well. In politics, you either lead or you follow. And they have proven to be followers, and I think their legacies will be worse for it.
Is this a win for Marco Rubio? I mean, you can tell when Donald Trump speaks, he doesn't even show Marco Rubio an ounce of respect, and he's got a shadow Secretary of State and Steve Witkoff standing over his shoulder, who is Donald Trump's actual homeboy and ally, not Marco Rubio.
Well, when David was talking earlier about the sort of craven incentive to be part of an administration for ego, when we were talking about Scott Bessent or Howard Lutnick, the diplomatic side of that is Marco Rubio. He knows better. And he was sitting on that couch in the Oval Office looking like a shrunken, defeated man who lacked the courage and the integrity to speak up in that moment and say it's inappropriate for the Vice President and the President of the United States to bully an ally who is desperate for U.S. support and is fighting a war against a larger, more bullying neighboring nation that is going to do to other countries in Eastern Europe if we don't stand tall with Ukraine now. And again, the bargain that these people have made with Donald Trump, and it was in his first term, it's now in his second term, is this idea that they can partner with him and enrich themselves or expand who they are, but at the end of the day, he breaks them.
F around and find out.